Hi there. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of resume writing. But first, to start, let's go over a quick quiz. This will really help us get a sense of your knowledge base and expertise when it comes to resume writing and can really help us frame our discussion for today. So the first, resumes list all of your experiences, skills, and education. We wish that this was true, but in reality, we can't fit everything that we've done typically on one page, which is the standard way that most resumes are written. So instead, we have to think about, well, what is the most relevant things that we've done and tailor those for a specific resume, for a specific job. So resumes instead list your relevant experiences. So what is important for that position? Employers spend about 3 minutes reading your resume. In reality, they spend about 6.5 seconds on average. The tips and techniques we'll talk about today are designed to help you have your resume actually read in a quick manner so that the most important stuff is up at the top and that you're more likely to have your resume placed into the yes pile. True or false, there's no standard way to write a resume. Unfortunately, this is true. Much of the thing that makes resume writing challenging is the fact that there's not a lot of agreed upon conventions when it comes to resume writing. If you ask 3 different people, even in my field, about resumes, you probably will get different feedback on your resume. It's highly subjective. What we're going to talk about today is how you can basically tailor your resume for a position and some general tips that are going to be effective for most people creating resumes for most industries. And finally, the purpose of a resume is to get a job. You know that your resume is working when you're getting interviews. A resume won't necessarily get you the job, but it will help you get that interview. So if you're getting interviews, your resume is working the way that you want it to. So what typically goes onto a resume? There are only 3 required sections that we're going to talk about today: your contact information, your education, and your experience. Skills is an optional section that we'll touch on today, but know that it's not required. So contact information is going to be up at the very top of your resume, regardless of the style you're using. You'll lead into your education section. Education is going to remain at the top of your resume until it's no longer relevant. So typically until you're out into a few jobs past your first job outside of college. And then you lead into your experience section, which is the bulk of your resume, and end with your skills section as an optional section. So contact information, a couple basic tips. No one is probably going to mail you as the primary form of communication at this point. So instead of worrying about listing your full address and wasting the space, you can instead just give the city that you live in, your phone and email, and optionally, a link to your LinkedIn or online portfolio. We have a couple videos about LinkedIn, so I encourage you to take a look at those. Many recruiters will look at your LinkedIn, so I encourage you to list it here. Your education comes next, as we mentioned, and in this case, you're going to mention UT, your major. You can list your minor, certificate, or concentration if that's relevant. And GPA is one that I tend to get lots of questions about. I encourage you to list your GPA if you're proud of it. There is no formal cutoff or magical number at which your GPA should or should not be on your resume. It's really a personal decision. And finally, you'll list the year that you'll be graduating. So here's a couple examples. One special note, if you find that you are working full-time for at least a portion of your time at UT, it can be helpful for you to call this out and mention it in your education section, right? Because that helps give more context to why your GPA might not be as high as other people's, right? Because you are working for 30 hours a week. Experience is the bulk of your resume. So there's only a couple things I really want to touch on for experiences today. Most things that you're doing are experiences. So think of the term experiential learning that we use in ULN. There are so many things that count for experiential learning, because all of those things are experiences that are relevant for you and relevant for your career. So your experience section could include research that you've done, clubs or organizations that you've been a part of, leadership positions that you've held, volunteer internships, part-time jobs. Any of these things could count and could be included in your experience section. And so we'll talk more in future videos about how you might tailor your materials best for the particular jobs that you're applying to. Because we know that recruiters spend about 6.5 seconds glancing at our resume, it's important that we use bullets and make things as easy to read as possible for the recruiter. So your bullets start with a strong action verb. We've got a full action verb list that I encourage you to take a look at. That can be really helpful as you tailor what you're trying to talk about for your resume. And you're doing 3 things with your bullets. You're explaining what you did, what skills you gained, and how you were effective. And again, we'll talk more about that in the transferable skills and crafting strong bullets video. The only other thing to note is that everything here is listed in reverse chronological order, which means the most recent thing you've done is up at the top. of this section. Briefly, as an aside, I do want to mention, if you're applying to positions on Hire U Texas powered by Handshake, where many of our folks are actively looking for ULN students for positions, it is vital that you include ULN on your resume. This is the way that they can tell that you are a ULN student and give you preference or priority for positions. There's a couple ways that you can list ULN, and it's really up to you how you want to do that. This person is listed ULN under their leadership and involvement section, and they've given a couple of bullets to flesh out what they're experiencing in ULN and what they're learning. I encourage you to craft your own bullets based on your own lived experience in ULN. Some students may find that the honors and awards section is a more appropriate place to put their ULN experience. And finally, the skills section. The skills section is optional, but the key thing I want to talk about today is what you actually put in your skills section. I think back to when I created my first resume, and my skills section was filled of transferable skills: effective communicator, problem solving, working in a team, that kind of stuff. We have a whole transferable skills video I would encourage you to look at if you want to learn more. The challenge is that is not the kinds of things that you want to demonstrate in your skills section. Those are the things you want to demonstrate throughout your resume, right? In your actual bullets. The skills section is reserved for highly measurable, demonstrable skills like computer languages or programs, software programs, languages that you speak. So the transferable skills aren't going to be listed here. They'll be listed all throughout your resume. So I encourage you to take a look at our other videos, and of course, follow up, contact your coordinator if you have any questions when it comes to resumes.